This is an introduction to JeQuest at YouTube with the true tale of the revolting peasant by JeQuest at YouTube. For more information, please email JeQuest, spelled like that, 21, so that's JeQuest21@gmail.com. Okay, I shall begin the story of the very, very, very revolting peasant, made all the more revolting and made revolting in total by the UK government. We have a serious problem in the UK with the government that's so isolated from its taxpayers that it believes, as it does, as stated in 2012 by Lord Freud MP, that all, and I mean all, he said all, self-employed single parents and sickness claimants live in comfort on a few £100 annual wages without taking any risks. You see, it's all very well to make statements, but when they are false statements, they are fraudulent. So realistically, because of the extenuating level of damages in this case, it really is the legal case of fraud. Freud. And I shall begin. Off-grid, a short tale by JeQuest at YouTube. The peasant revolts. In fact, this one particular peasant was made particularly revolting by the UK government. My pen is my sword. Once upon a time, in a land within a land, we, the people, were free. We were free to live, we were free to roam. It didn't cost us any money to live wherever we lived. We were able to gather our food from the harvest of the pantry that lived outside of any shelter that we happened to live in. We didn't have to pay taxes. We didn't have to pay rent to landlords. We didn't have any of the stresses and the strains. We lived free. I did dream and imagine that. I dreamed of living in an eco-village type community from the BTEC HNC in building studies, if not before actually. So it's 2001, 2003. I did imagine it, and now I am whenever I can, all thanks to the Land Stewardship Trust, T.G. And in the peace and the quiet, finally surrounded by nature, with the acceptance of all the butterflies, bees and dragonflies, honey buzzards, raptors, ants, owls and the crow, newts, weasels, mice, foxes and more. I can be me. I am free to be me, and I can write. And so I do. The magic pen and magical digital ink flow. Here, now, I am finally able to write midst the long grasses, nettles and thistles, the long, long tale of the peasant's revolt. I revolt. I represent me. I'm revolting. completely revolting because the UK government made me so. So this is written to all you Greens, to all you Yellows, Liberal Democrats, to all you Reds in Labour and in ferments, explosively, I write now to you all, whatever your colour, if you value trouble and strife. Because I've had a particularly hard life, made all the more hard by the blue Conservative government line. In fact, I'm completely and utterly disgusted by the UK government's lack of protection of human rights, civil rights and consumer rights that took away our freedoms, took away our rights, took away access to justice. And when I say our, I was also at the time representing 3 dependents, 2 of whom were minors. So multimillionaires like Lord Freud living and working in city environs have no connection with us peasants, our most mortal peasants living in the UK as we do. And it's all very well to say we live in comfort, but actually we don't. And if you look at the rest of the inclusions already loaded on my YouTube channel, you'll see evidence. Photographs, film, legals, the lot. This has been going on for over a decade now, and I am thoroughly revolting. In 2012, we were fraudulently missold a vehicle that didn't work, specifically needed for both business and for personal use. It wasn't a one-stop, one-thing purchase, so it affected both my work life and my private life and my children's life and the lives of my animals and the lives of all of the non-profits that I represented. It sunk the ARC social enterprise without a trace before its launch. It caused no end of trouble and strife. It has gone on and on, ad infinitum, ever since 2012. So it's 10 years of hell, thanks to this government. Lord Freud MP's claim is fraudulent. So those of us who did risk were caught out because there was no consumer rights, no civil rights, no human rights protection for us or our dependents. We believe in the UK, in justice. We believe in the UK that everything's going to be all right. We believe that the police will stand up against the criminals, and we believed that trading standards would assess that we had the case that we knew that we had when we registered the case with them in March 2012. Unfortunately, they didn't leave their comfortable seats. They didn't leave their centrally heated, air-conditioned offices. They didn't get into the cars paid for by the taxpayers' expensive taxes. No. It was all down to me to do everything. Well, if you've ever been a single parent, you will understand part of the problem here, because you already had to do everything anyway. So, you know, most people think, oh, well, that's okay. It's the same for us. We do everything too. Do you? Do you really? Have you got 3 children? Have you worked 22-hour days? And are you trying to live on £50 a week for all of you? Running your car to do so? No, you possibly live in a town or a city and there might be buses outside your door. They can get you to the tube station or the railway station. You can go from there, or there's coaches. You've got plenty of options. Out here in the countryside, there aren't. It may come as a shock to the people in the big city, the rectangular grey city, covered in polluted streets, carpeted with debris and detritus. It may come as a shock to you all that actually we don't have any rights at all as peasants. And I can say the word peasant, not just because I can, but that's because that's what the Oxford English Dictionary describes us as. If we are countrymen or countrywomen, we are classified under the Oxford English Dictionary as peasants. It's pronounced apparently peas-ant. So I am a peas-ant speaking now from down here amongst the undergrowth. I am nothing more than an ant under the foot of the Conservative government, which has made my life a living hell, and those of my daughter and 2 sons for as long as they were forced to endure it too. Thank you very much, Lord Freud. Thank you also to David Cameron MP, another liar. David Cameron said nobody could have predicted the effects of the recession. Well, Cameron, you're wrong. You're a lying and you're a fraudster too, because actually some of us paid to learn about the predicted effects of the recession, which were prophesied in the lecture room in 2002. So we knew exactly what was coming. Built the Ark social enterprise and was sunk because I don't have any rights. And so it was 38,000, 39,000 out actually in 2011-12 income tax year, only to earn back just £700. And believe it or not, Lord Freud, no, it was not a comfortable situation, because we didn't have access to credit. Unlike you, we didn't own our own homes. We had no money left in the bank account and only a £500 overdraft facility. No credit cards, no loans, no family to reach out to, no friends to reach out to with money. There was nobody, and we were just waiting for the access to justice which we believed was due us, which we knew was due us, which was why we registered the case with Trading Standards at Norfolk County Council in March of 2012. Now, Norfolk County Council, is tied in with North Norfolk District Council. They're all government departments, and when you're self-employed, as I have been registered from the 14th of February in 2000, what happens is you, as a self-employed sole trader, freelancer or entrepreneur with a small or micro enterprise, need to take all of your paperwork and receipts into the local authorities. They won't accept anything that you say if you're asking for any form of help, you see. So you're all right if you're rich, you don't have to go through this procedure. But if you are not rich, then you need to ask for help when you've got children, because you're not free to do what you would if you didn't have them. You can't just run off and earn income from here, there or anywhere, unless, of course, you buy the equipment needed to do so. Well, it just so happened that was the case in 2012. So I had many work commitments, and I had a beautiful private commission that I was commissioned to go to on the 21st of May in 2011 by Howard and Jill Lefley, who asked me if I could travel out to their place in Spain. They wanted me to design and help to build an eco-retreat out there, and of course I would have got paid and I could have been living in the sunshine with my children. I just needed to be able to get there, and in order to get there with 2 dogs, a rabbit, Steve, my daughter, 2 sons, myself, all our work equipment, home study equipment, clothes, all of the kit and caboodle we needed to get going, to launch the Ark social enterprise, not just to go to Spain, ivy farm in transition the other side of King's Lynn, grow grow farm, organic raw milk dairy at Hoathly Bay Open Prison Site, eco-villages across the UK, intentional eco-village type communities, eco-festivals, eco-conferences, green builds, eco-build, wherever we were going there. We needed to travel. Couldn't leave the children at home in the village of Wood Norton. So instead of continuing to pay the unaffordable private rental, and specifically when prevented from earning my income anyway, because there is no furlough, there never was any furlough, it wasn't just COVID in 2020. Actually, everybody else fell into the hole that I'd discovered in 2012, and I'd been stuck there all by myself from 2012 onwards. So according to Excluded UK organisation, 3 million self-employed freelancers, sole traders and entrepreneurs fell into a situation where they could receive no furlough during the pandemic, and that was minus the 19 odd that committed suicide. Well, I didn't commit suicide, but I'll tell you what, I lived in hell. And so did my children. So did my animals. I couldn't fulfill my work commitments. I had to turn work down. So one of my regular clientele was the Honourable Diana McFadden and family, who I met with on the 22nd of December in 2012, and they asked me to continue onwards. I was instructed to work on the project I'd already gained them planning consent for, which was next to the Host Arms in Burnham Market, and I had some, I'm ever so sorry, I haven't got electricity. I haven't got any way to run the computer. I can't work for you. The government's left me in this situation, so I couldn't earn my income. I couldn't access the internet. I couldn't help with my daughter's home study plan from the end of November 2012. We were forced out of the rental in Wood Norton because at £650 a month, if you only earn £700 in a year, it doesn't get you very far, as you can imagine. And my landlords were fed up with me not paying the rent while I was waiting for Norfolk County Council to pull their finger out and get on to get us our money back so I could get the van and then tow the caravan with a different vehicle and continue onwards with the journey. So we went to stay on a field not far from Wells next the sea. So effectively, from a £39,000 outlay, we travelled 15 miles on a journey which ended up taking us from the beginning of September in 2012 until the 24th of May in 2013. We were left without access to a bath. From the end of November 2012 until the 24th of May 2013. There was no way to wash our clothes easily or dry anything. In fact, because throughout the winter of our discontent 2012 to 13, the time at which Lord Freud said everybody was living in comfort, we were freezing to death in sub-zero temperatures in a condition or situation where we were the heat. There was no heat. It was pitch black bar the candlelight, and as we lay in bed, all huddled together, my daughter, my sons, myself, and one of our dogs with a very short fur coat, who luckily let off an awful lot of heat and kept our feet warm. We were covered with as many duvets, blankets and sleeping bags as we could possibly find to put across us. Unfortunately, as we lay in bed night after night with our jaws clamped together to prevent our teeth from chattering all night long, watching by candlelight our breath rise as clouds of steam resting upon the ceiling. Overnight, the steam would condense into ice, and during the day, when there was the slightest bit of warmth, the ceiling would drip from icicles across our bed linen, pillows, cushions, the carpet, all of the soft fabricings in the caravan that we were trying to survive in under the hell that this Conservative government had put us into. Most vulnerable situation, I have to say. We suffered from really, really bad chest infections. The caravan, like most, are formed with formaldehyde. So you're in a situation where you're in a freezing box filled with formaldehyde gas. We had serious chest infections. We couldn't get to the doctors. We had no address. We weren't allowed to tell anybody where we were under the terms of the temporary tenure afforded us. So we had 12 weeks whilst waiting for trading standards to finally sort out what we'd registered with them in March of 2012. Sadly, trading standards by the end of the temporary term of tenure had not. They just left us there. The landowners got very agitated, upset and angered by our situation. So much so that we were under repeated threats by them to get us off the land, to push us off their land. They felt we were after it, but we weren't. We were stuck. They could see we had no car. They knew of the problems with the car. It had all been explained throughout, and yet they took no heed and took no consideration of fact. They just wanted us gone. They wanted us off there, and they made our life a living hell. We were petrified. I was petrified. My daughter, I was petrified. And my eldest son was petrified. My second son went to avoid the situation by staying at his father's in Cromer. It was the first time I'd ever been without my children for anything like this. In fact, by the end of December, trading standards decided that we had got the case that we claimed that we had for the 9 months that we've been claiming we had it, and only then did they ask what the purpose of the purchase was, having spent the 9 months assessing whether the vehicle supplied for that purpose was actually fit for that purpose, which it wasn't, and it wasn't fit for any other either. It was absolutely awful. We were ripped off £13,000 on that one vehicle alone. 1/3 of our inheritance outlay in 2011-12 was on the Land Rover that didn't work, and it was the key vehicle needed to get out because the 11-ton exhibition lorry needed an awful lot more work. It was an investment for the future, as was the Land Rover for my children and I. It had a fold-out covered stage with stepped and ramped access, and it had an acoustic set stage cover at the rear too. It had its onboard generator, and when first purchased it was completely unroadworthy. So on top of the original purchase price for the exhibition lorry of £6,500, we then paid out a further £6,000 on all the work needed to get it roadworthy, MOT'd, etc, etc, etc. But even then I couldn't drive it because I hadn't got the HGV, because we were at that stage, we were out of money. What was needed was to get out first with the Land Rover towing the vehicle. The Land Rover was sold as having a brand new V8 4.6 litre 100% gas engine, which, as defined by the seller, was a brand new technologically advanced engine that was specifically designed to run on gas and gas alone from new. So it wasn't like a converted petrol engine, he said. It's all very well saying something, isn't it? And we think in the UK, if the seller's selling something, they have to describe what they're selling accurately. A false accuracy is a fraud. So if you're saying you're selling something you're not, then that is a fraudulent sale, and this was clearly the case in this instance. Not only that, not only did it have a seriously faulty, supposedly brand new engine, but the vehicle itself was a complete and utter death trap. It wasn't just not fit for purpose, it wasn't fit for the road. Terry at Hayward Land Rovers did a vehicle inspection report later. He reckoned it was only worth £650. We paid £13,000 for that. I'd been wondering where the radio aerial was. Do you know where it was? Hanging in one of the wheel arches. Suspended there. That's just a start, as the windows were installed the wrong way around, the doors didn't lock, the electrics blew, they sparked, they arced, they nearly electrocuted my eldest son, witnessed by my second son. So it wasn't just me, I was just representing my children as a single mother. That's what we do, isn't it, eh? You know. You've got to stay strong for the kids. You can't give in to that. You can't give in to bullying. You can't crack. You've got to stay strong. You've got all the legal cases to deal with. Because Trading Standards said it was a civil legal case and advised me I'd better pay a solicitor. Oh, and by the way, they said, this is Philip Etherington, he said, by the way, you do realise that you could have bought a brand new car for that money, don't you? I said, yes. But we didn't want a standard car. We needed an expedition vehicle to tow our 3.5-ton caravan across the Pennines, across the UK, and end up in Spain. This was not a standard purchase. And contrary to the vendor's retort, when the case was first registered and we asked for our refund, he inferred that as a woman I'd only purchased it simply because it was purple on a whim, and that I had no right for a refund, as if I'd bought the wrong type of shoes or the wrong flavoured lollipop. And that was in the email that Trading Standards had, and that was exactly how they treated me and my children. They just left us bereft of any form of rights. It's all very well telling a single mum who's just spent out the entirety and only earns £700 to instruct a solicitor and pay them. But how? You can't. You've got to do it all yourself. Do it all yourself. Prove everything. Prove everything to every government department, one after the other, because none of them can share the information you've already provided. So you've got to go through it over and over and over and over repeatedly, year after year after year, to North Norfolk District Council, to whichever government department, HMRC. So because there was nothing for anybody in that situation, no furlough, as explained by Peter Carter-Smith at the Norfolk Citizens Advice Bureau, if I had let anybody know, and I'm saying body as in government body, know, then they would have stopped working tax and child tax credits. They'd have stopped any form of benefit support. The only thing there would have been job seekers. Well, I had the job, I had the work. I just didn't have the vehicle, and I wouldn't be able to go to work anywhere without having a vehicle. That's the whole blooming point. In the countryside, it's different. It's 3 miles to a bus stop. It's 25 miles to the nearest station. So you need a vehicle. A situation that's never been allocated in any of the funding and support for rural people in working tax or child tax credits either. It wasn't just for me to get to work. I had to drive my children everywhere they needed to go. They didn't drive. They couldn't go and see their friends. They couldn't get to school. They couldn't do anything without a flipping car. It was a vital tool. It's no good leaving me for 9 months without one, and I am absolutely thoroughly disgusting having been left without a bath for 6 months, without being able to wash my clothes for 6 months, or my children's. Can you imagine being a teenage daughter, age 14, 15, and not being able to wash your hair or wear clean clothes, or access the home study plan approved by the same authority that left us without the opportunity of following it? Can you imagine what it was really, really like? According to history, the Peasants' Revolt started due to a lack of justice for rural people. Well, the situation is still the same now. It hasn't changed. In fact, we've just got paperwork to say that we have rights. One after World War II and World War I last century. Through all of the millions of people who gave their lives for the freedoms that are denied us by this government. For all of those who lost their lives for everything that they believed the government of the day was telling them. We have got the human rights written. They're on pieces of paper. They're just words typed upon sheets of paper. They have no value whatsoever. But we paid for them. We paid by the lives lost. We paid by family members killed during the war. We paid by our taxes. We paid through everything for that which we haven't got. So that itself is fraud to Freud. And it was Freud. It was sub-zero temperatures and we nearly died, my children and I, thanks to you and yours. And in fact, you owe us huge amounts in compensation for all the damages caused to us by your lies, by your fraud, by your breach of contract, and the complete and utter removal of consumer rights, civil rights and human rights in the UK. The damages haven't stopped. They didn't stop in 2012 with the sale of the car. They didn't stop. They carried on. I earned nothing in 2013 whatsoever until October. Some other fraudster took a 3.5-ton caravan which cost us £5,500 and in exchange promised a Daewoo 4x4 which they didn't provide. One excuse after another, month after month after month after month, from the beginning of June 2013 until finally October the same year, when after I had a verbal assault against him and made many threats of legal action, he gave it this really grotty old Peugeot 206 white van with black and miscoloured panel replacement which had been run on sump oil, which at least was roadworthy in as much as it had MOT at the time. So within a week I was starting work delivering Good Luck Chinese. By this stage, on the 24th of May 2013, we moved back into the little village of Hindle Veston, into a Broadland Housing Association house. But it didn't stop there, because Broadland Housing expected me to be able to pay rent after I'd earned nothing and been robbed of all of our money, and we'd just come off the field out of hell. So we finally had access to a bath and electricity and light, and we didn't even have the internet until the following December. So actually I was without the internet for well over a year and had no access to a car for a year either, having paid out £39,000 initially. So with a salary of minus £38,000, no access to credit, and continual strain. Oh, it was hell. I kid you not. A real hell. Thanks to this government. Deplorable. I did get some help, thankfully. Because it was a social enterprise, I had consulted with Neil Godfrey, who was a development caseworker at Voluntary Norfolk from 2011, so he knew what the aim of the ARC's launch was, as did Norman Lamb MP, Sir Norman Lamb, afterwards. So when the landowners of the field said they were going to take legal action, get the bailiffs after us, the High Sheriff, the law, the police, and all of the threats they made, which was so intimidating, my son and I, my eldest son and I, laughed when they said they would be contacting the local MP to get us off their land, because we thought, thank God for that, at least Norman knows. And we knew Norman of old, you know. He'd been very helpful in the past, a jolly nice man. However, that was just another threat, it turned out. So although we couldn't tell Norman we were there, because we weren't allowed to tell anybody we was there, they had said they were going to, as one of the threats against us, and they didn't fulfil that threat. So we never got the opportunity of speaking with Norman to explain our situation and get the help that we were due. We never had any of the help that we were due. Neil Godfrey, Voluntary Norfolk, did do. He did help. He represented the ARC social enterprise at a Green Party conference in Norwich, which I couldn't get to because I had no car. And luckily, when he was talking to Norfolk County Councillor Adrian Dernley, who was a Green Party councillor at the time, Adrian said, she needs help with her accounts. And as a qualified accountant, was in a situation where he volunteered to help. Thank God for him. Thank God for Neil Godfrey, and thank God for Howard and Jill Leftley, because having explained the situation to them, Howard being a retired solicitor, he hadn't been at the bar practising for over 20 years, so he was well out of touch, but at least he had a basis in criminal law and understood our situation enough through our explanation and seeing and witnessing the conditions we were stuck in. So very kindly he took on the supporting role in drawing up the original draft statements, and then I needed to go from there and tune it in and tweak it into our situation and list the damages. Then effectively what you see on the JeQuest channel now are some speed throughs of some of the evidence that was presented to the courts, to Norfolk District Council, to Norfolk County Council, to the UK government, to the Parliamentary Ombudsman, to HMRC, in our legal case of appeal against HMRC, because as Julie prophesied, by the time, we told them what had happened, they immediately axed child tax credits for my daughter because we couldn't follow the home study plan. And because actually we were not in a situation where we had any options, there was no way out of this situation, because without money you have nothing. You have no rights. So HMRC made our lives even more hellish. On top of Broadland Housing threatening eviction proceedings, Norfolk District Council threatening me with imprisonment because I had no money to pay their council taxes. It just continued onwards, and luckily, thank God for the voluntary support from Adrian Dearnley, it helped with dealing with North Norfolk District Council, because they just wouldn't accept anything I said. The government said our situation didn't arise. So obviously I must be a liar then. No, I wasn't. I never have been. I don't lie. This is the truth. The truth. The whole truth. So help me God. Hand on Bible. The whole lot. I don't have a problem telling the truth. I have a problem with people accepting the fact that I'm telling the truth when they won't even look at the evidence. So what's happened is that when the judges look at the evidence, because they are duty bound to do so, they find in my favour, because the evidence is the evidence is the evidence. Our case of appeal against HMRC started in 2014. Judge Rosser, at the appeal court judge, first had to discharge the case because HMRC failed to provide the evidence requested, and also failed to provide any legal representative either. It was just assumed by HMRC, again, that I was a liar and they had a case against us, which they did not. So the case was then adjourned from that to a second case, which was then heard by Judge Cooper, who found in our favour, and I won the case as appellant. The £5,000 claimed due to HMRC was discharged, and the amount that HMRC owed to our family for my daughter's child tax credits was paid in arrears. But I was never paid for all of my time working self-employed on all the legal cases and for all of the expenses that were due to me. So it was only an arrears thing, and I didn't have time to get on with that case to put in for all my lost earnings and for the expenses, because I was straight on with the next legal case. So it was left there. I had the case against RPI International UK Limited as the plaintiff, representing my children for not just the refund of the money due for the vehicle, but also for the extenuating level of damages caused through my loss of earnings. The suppliers were fully aware of what the purpose of the purchase was when trying to meet that purchase with what they were selling, which they didn't do, obviously. So they owed us for the damages, not only just from that, but also if you are a designer and or an engineer and you design something that fails, i.e. is a design fail, and which causes damages, you have a criminal level of liability against you as a professional person working in the field. And I happen to know that because I know what I have to comply to, and so I know that that's applicable to those who are also doing the same sort of thing, or claiming that they are, shall we say. It's not quite the same to claim it, is it? It's like David Cameron MP, PM at the time, saying that nobody could have anticipated the effects of recession. I think that was after the first wave of recession in 2008 he said that. Well, actually, that's a lie. That's fraud too, because on the BTEC HNC and Building Studies 2001-2003, which I attended, the effects of the 2 waves of recession were prophesied, God help us all, as our lecturer stated at the time. If, specifically, the government just carried on and bailed out the bankers as they had done in previous recessions, when the banks came willy-nilly claiming bankruptcy, all taxpayers' funds went to the banks. If they did that, and if they didn't put caveats in place to stop their oversale of debt, they'd just carry on and do the same again as they had before, and it would lead to a second wave of recession. But looking at the figures, there was no way out of this. No way at all. I mean, like, seriously, looking at the figures, you couldn't do this. So they shouldn't have bailed out the bankers in 2008. No way. Because there just wasn't enough taxpayers' funds left to do that and support the welfare state. So it's all very well saying we're all living in comfort and telling the world that there's no problems for self-employed single parents or sickness claimants, but that is baloney. Complete and utter baloney. So I'm blowing my whistle, I'm blowing my trumpet, I'm making a lot of noise. I'm drumming up the noise now as a peasant revolting, made revolting by this government. This is another peasant's revolt. So if you have been affected by anything that I'm saying, if you're a barrister and would like to take this government to task for lack of access to justice, lack of free legal aid, lack of free healthcare, access to healthcare, dentistry, access to toilet facilities, bath, shower, clean clothes, heat, electricity, electric light, education, etc. We have everything to prove the case. We've kept it all. It's all here. So please do get in touch via email to JeQuest21, so that's JeQuest21 at gmail.com. And, you know, I have found one legal team who were prepared to use our case to help to change the government's lack of support for the self-employed freelancers, sole traders and entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, etc. But I don't know where the piece of paper has gone, because this is a very small house. I've got all my work equipment, all of the damages, plus we're trying to live in it as well, and have been for the past since 2013. Longer story can ensue, but this is why I've created a new channel under the name JeQuest. I was gifted the name JeQuest originally when I was a teenager in my first proper job, which was at Amateur Education Office in Buckinghamshire, where I worked as a wages clerk. I used to go up into the general office at lunchtime and sit with Hilda and Kathy was a lovely Christian lady. We have many talks, and she liked my poetry and writing, and I said, well, I had to stop because I felt I needed to write a book. She said, well, when you do, please do use my maiden name of JeQuest. She believed ultimately that I would write or narrate my story one way or another later. It was many years ago now, I can assure you. But anyway, I said to her, because of her faith, I wanted her to know that mine might be slightly different, because it would reflect, I had no doubt, upon the landing on this planet by other more advanced races, species, even humanoid, be it or whatever. And she said, no, she said. In fact, if you look in the Old Testament, it actually describes that sort of incident occurring. So she had no problem with me taking her name to write later. And I'm going to finish this brief introduction with another shout out to barristers. Please, I need your help. Jerome Mayhew MP has raised, or said he would raise, our findings in Parliament. He is our local constituency MP and was a barrister practising at the bar. However, I haven't heard any more back from him, and in the meantime Boris Johnson had been discussing the scrapping of the Human Rights Bill. So we need to bring this all around. Enough's enough already. I've had enough. I've got all the evidence. I just need to pass it over to somebody who can take action, and I can get on with living with an uncluttered existence and all of the damages out of my life. I might be able to fully heal from the mental health issues that have arisen since the PTSD effects of stress, anxiety and depression were finally diagnosed in January of 2020, just before everybody else fell into the same hole. So that was one lucky stroke, as was one or two of the other strokes along the way. And as stated, this is all thanks to the freedom currently provided to me as a rural peasant by the Land Stewardship Trust and by Tony Gosling, and the healing of Catherine Crewney. That's CREUYNNI.com. If you've got mental health issues, suffering from the effects of PTSD, stress, anxiety, depression, please contact Catherine. She's awesome. And so is the Medicine Wheel training and healing program, which I will be talking about in further broadcasts. Anyway, suffice for now. Thank you for listening.